Hey everybody, it's Brian Haskins here. Wanted to welcome you to a great week in real estate investing. I'm going to be answering a ton of questions this week and giving you a few videos that are 100% pure content. So I want you to enjoy this and hopefully you'll learn a ton this week about real estate investing and some great tips that are going to help you with your business. So the first video I've made this week is going to be called Your Earnest Money Questions Answered. And basically, I wanted to just spend some time going over some of the questions that I always hear people have about earnest money and wanted to kind of break those down, answer them, and kind of, uncover any myths or anything like that that people might have. So let's go ahead and jump right in. Like I said, there's going to be nothing to sell on any of these videos that I'm working on. It's just some great content for you. So enjoy it, and I hope you learn a ton. So let's talk a little bit about some of the questions. I mean, I get asked all the time, number one, who holds the earnest money? How much earnest money do you put down? What if the seller asks for more earnest money? What do you do? Do I really have to put earnest money down? What do I do if I have no money for the deposit? Can I hold the earnest money deposit? How does earnest money work and what really is it? And really a ton of other questions. So I'm just going to go ahead and jump right on in and we're going to go ahead and get them all answered. So let's talk a little bit about what earnest money is and how does it work. Well, first of all, earnest money is the money that you put down in a contract to show the buyer that you are a serious person that's interested, and it also makes the contract legal and binding. So without earnest money, you really don't have a contract. So you got to have something that makes it legal and binding. So it is definitely required. And again, it shows the buyer that you're serious, or it shows the seller that you're serious. And typically you put it down whenever you write a contract, and then it gets deposited whenever the contract gets accepted. All right, we're going to talk about that a little bit more in detail here in a few moments, but let's talk a little bit about who holds the actual earnest money deposit. Now, typically it's going to be the title company or the closing attorney that is on the contract. So for instance, if you chose the title company and you put the title company on your contract, that's typically who is going to hold the earnest money. All right? Let's talk a little bit about how much to put down. Now, this is a huge topic that I get asked all the time. People want to know, do I really have to put down $1,000 in earnest money? What do I have to do? So basically, you can put down as little or as much as you want. It really just depends on what the seller requires you to put down. Now, it doesn't necessarily even have to be money. It can be anything with value. It could be a car, it could be a boat. Now, typically, in investment property, it's going to be money, all right? And typically, I like to use anywhere from $10 to $100 in earnest money, all right? And I'm going to talk about that in more detail here in just a little bit. Now, some banks typically require anywhere from 3% or $1,000, whatever is, the most for REO properties. So if you're going to be dealing with REOs, typically you have to put down a lot more money. When it comes to working with traditional sellers, you can put down anywhere from $10 all the way up to as much money as you possibly want. Now, typically on smaller, lower end properties, you can get away with $10 to $100. On real high end properties, $1 million properties, or if you're dealing with motivated sellers where they know a lot about the investing business, sometimes they might ask you to put down a little bit more. So we're also going to talk about that in more detail here shortly as well. All right, so what do you do if the seller asks you for more earnest money? And really, the question is, will they ever ask you? But you want to be prepared. Now, typically, they're not going to ask you. Out of probably the 1,000 appointments that I've actually been on, maybe 3 out of those 1,000 appointments actually asked me to put down more earnest money, and I'm talking more than $10, okay? So it typically doesn't happen very often, but you need to be prepared if for some reason it would happen, okay? So if somebody asks you, why are you only putting down $10 in earnest money, or why are you only putting down $100 in earnest money? Here's exactly what I say, and this is all that you need to say, okay? I'm a real estate investor, and I buy many properties each month. If I put down $1,000 for each property, that would be a lot of money. That's why I use $10, and that's all we really need to make it a valid contract. So that's all that I say, and then I move on. I don't stop and say, now, are you okay with $10? I just write the $10 down, and then I move on, okay? So here's the biggest point, and the reason why it's typically not a big deal, okay? Most people that are going to be selling investment properties typically don't understand the process. Maybe they have just inherited a property, or maybe, the only property they've ever bought and sold is the property that they live in. They might have done that 10 years ago, 15 years ago, so they don't understand the process. So to them, unless they realize and understand a lot about real estate investing, they might not even think that $10 or $100 in earnest money is a big deal, because it really isn't, okay? But typically, the only reason someone is going to ask you to put down more money or question the amount of money you put down is if you make it a big deal or if you question it first. So, for example, if you're filling out a contract and you get down to the point to where it talks about earnest money, if you just say, I'm going to be putting down $10 in earnest money, you write $10 down, and then you move on to the next part of the contract, it's not going to be a big deal. Here's when it becomes a big deal, okay? If you get to the point to where it asks you about earnest money, you say, is it okay with you if I put down $10 in earnest money? Now, what did you just do there? You just made them question why you're putting down $10. If you just told them you're putting down $10, they're never going to question it, okay? So it is extremely important that you tell them, I'm putting down $10 in earnest money, put it down in the contract, and then move on. If you ask them if it's okay, that's whenever you're going to have problems, all right? So it's very important to realize that, all right? That's going to be a huge difference, in how many people are going to ask you questions about that. Okay, let's talk about, do you really have to put down earnest money? The question is, do you really have to put down earnest money? And the answer, honestly, is yes. In most cases, you need to put down earnest money. Like I said, it makes it a legal and binding contract, and most people are going to require it. The only time typically that you will not have to put down earnest money, now don't get me wrong, you're going to have to put it down on the contract, all right? But you might not have to actually, send it to the title company and they'll deposit it. And the only way you can really get around this is if you are working with motivated sellers and you're working with a title company or a closing attorney that closes a lot of deals for you, and they trust you and know you. So what happens is you'll still put down the $10 on the contract or the $100 on the contract, whatever you put down. But typically, they will just factor that in on the HUD and then factor it in on your amount of money that you get paid out at closing. They'll just take that $10 or $100 out. They won't actually require you to bring down a $10 check each time. Now, whenever you're first getting started with title companies, a lot of times they are going to go ahead and require that. But for, people that you've worked with for a long time and people once they get to know you, there's a good chance they're not going to make you actually give them the check. Now, you're still going to put it on the contract, but you might not have to actually give them the check. So that really kind of answers the question on, if you have to put it down or not, because I know that it's something that a lot of people question and it's something a lot of people hear about, so I just wanted to make sure I made that clear. Okay, so what do you do if you have no money for the deposit? Well, if you're dealing with REO properties, they're going to require you put down that $1,000. Now, if you don't have the money, typically what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to borrow that money. And then whenever you get a non-refundable deposit from your buyer, once you find that buyer, you're going to be able to get your money back and you can pay off that loan for the deposit. Okay? There's no way to get around it when it comes to dealing with REO properties. Okay? Now, if it comes to the case you're working with motivated sellers, if you can't come up with the $10 or $100, you're going to have to borrow it. And then, hopefully once you get a non-refundable deposit, you'll have to get that money back as well. But in some cases, like I said, if you're dealing with title companies that you've dealt with a lot in the past, a lot of times they're not going to make you put down that earnest money. All right. The next question is, can I hold on to the earnest money deposit? Well, in most cases, you can hold on to the earnest money deposit, but I don't typically recommend it. I like to actually have a title company or a third party hold on to the earnest money deposit. That way there's no questions on where it's going, what it's being used for. It's always a good idea to make sure that it goes to a third party to hold on to that for you, okay? So that really answers most of the questions that people have about earnest money and how it's used and all the different potential problems that come up with earnest money and all the things that you probably always wondered about. So I hope you enjoyed this training video. Like I said, I'm going to be doing a lot more content each week. You're going to be getting a lot of great videos that are going to be a lot like this. So if you have any questions or if you have any ideas on some other videos you want to see, definitely don't hesitate to contact me. I'd love to bring the content for you, and hopefully I can continue to share more information each and every week with you. So Again, this is Brian Haskins with wholesaletoriches.com and brianhaskins.com. Hope you enjoyed this training video and look forward to sending you a lot more content.